Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Lori Leibowitz. Can you all hear me? I want to make sure that okay. It's kind of an intimate gathering. I was going to start off with if you got a ticket in here, it was harder getting a ticket to this meeting than it was to go to the Taylor Swift concert. Last year we had the same meeting, and I want to say maybe 11, maybe 10 people showed. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy week. I know I'm a parent myself, so I know how hard it is on Tuesday at 6 p.m. to make time for a meeting, and I really appreciate it. It shows that there's a lot of interest in this program, and this program is, I call it my baby, even though it's not really my baby. And I'll talk a little bit about that some more. If anyone needs Spanish translation, we have Juana in the back to help us out. Always want to be, cognizant of that. So we're going to talk about, this is really a general information meeting about what the Gifted and Talented program is all about in the Norwalk Public Schools. So this is our agenda for the evening. I'll talk about what the program is. We'll talk a little bit about the characteristics of giftedness and what it means to be gifted. I think some of you will be surprised that some of the characteristics of giftedness are not what you would expect. We'll talk about how do we identify for gifted and talented in the Norwalk Public Schools. So we'll talk about identification. We will also talk about tiered services. Our program is multifaceted, and I will talk about the differences. We are a talent development program, and I will get into what talent development actually means. And I love to save some time for questions and answers. I might stop midway and see if there's questions, and then I'd love to leave time at the end if you have questions. Okay? I love using this. Just a little bit about me. I started this role. This was a new role to the district when I started here 6 years ago. There wasn't someone in my position really before. And the program was called Academically Talented. So it was a huge switch from academically talented to something called Gifted and Talented in a talent development model. So here is our mission and vision, which we developed with our gifted and talented teachers. So our mission is we are committed to nurturing the whole child's distinct and diverse strengths, talents, and passions in order to develop student-driven critical thinking, come on in, authentic learning, individual responsibility, and global citizenship. Again, our vision, we think that all children have gifts and talents. They're all different. So it's our job to really make school enjoyable for our students, because we know when kids are engaged and they are interested and they are enthusiastic for what they're learning about, that's when their gifted characteristics can really shine and you see them. I'm sure you've probably seen this in some of your own children. When they're engaged in an activity that they really love, it's hard to sometimes pull them away from that activity, whether it's, let's say, building with Legos, drawing. Some kids love video games, right? It's really hard to kind of change their focus once they get really involved in an activity. And that is actually a gifted characteristic, when you can't pull your kid away from something that they're really interested in. So that's what we try to do here in our program, is to really make it a safe environment where kids can take risks and really explore their interests. So I have a video. It's a little bit old. It started when we first started the program. There have been a little bit of changes, and I'll talk a little bit about what they are. But I thought it's a 5-minute video. It'll just give you a little overview of what the program's all about. Hi, welcome. If you wouldn't mind signing in, that would be great. Let's see if this is played before. Yes. I'm afraid to make it big. Is that okay? Can everyone see? Okay.
What I did was I pulled out their...
The School-Wide Enrichment Model, or SEM, is being piloted at Tracy School, Cranberry School, and Rhoton Middle School. SEM is a talent development model created by Dr. Joseph Franzuli and Dr. Sally Reese from University of Connecticut. The Gifted and Talented program seeks to raise the rigor for all students involved.
Here in the Norwalk Public Schools, we have an amazing partnership with UConn, and specifically Dr. Renzulli and Dr. Lee. And we are so lucky to be able to be working with them to really push out the school-wide enrichment model. The Gifted and Talented program here in the Norwalk Public Schools rolled out this year. We had students that were participating in national competitions. We also had students that were participating in enrichment opportunities, as well as what we like to call our Type 3 projects. And those are when students are really involved in their interest or passion. At the first annual STEM fair that we had this year, we had projects that were Type 3 investigations, as well as History Day projects and Invention Convention projects. This year we had students that competed in the regional level, in the state level, as well as the national level of History Day and Invention Convention, and we are so proud of them.
My project is based on Ludwig van Beethoven. His music has influenced many people around the world, even today. I did a website because I wanted to showcase Beethoven's music while using my own words to explain about his life and how it connects to his music and how his life has influenced his music and people around him. This is my first time doing a website, so I had a couple challenges because I had to download music, edit it so it fits the 4-minute max, and I had to figure out how to embed it into my website. Doing projects like these, it helps you be more creative and analytic.
The title of my project is the Dust Bunny Extractor, and I decided to do this because I had difficulties cleaning around the house because dust was stuck in tight spaces. My invention is different from other cleaning places because the Dust Bunny Extractor can reach in really tight spaces because it's flexible. It's made up of electrical wire, which makes it bend better, and you could extend and shorten it, which makes it reach tighter spaces and spaces that you normally wouldn't be able to reach. I like the ending result because if you work on it, and it's just really cool to see how hard work pays off and how cool your final product will be.
My project is Top Fly Finder. Top Fly Finder helps you catch pop-ups in baseball and softball. When you hit the ball in the outfield, tie it in the net, it's fun to catch those. So I made an invention that went onto your glove to help you catch it. I got inspired by people struggling to catch top flies. What I like about inventing is the things that people make, the cool things that are all around us. I have a lot of inventions in my head right now, but I'm not telling them a single thing because I don't want anyone to steal them. We did this documentary for the National History Day competition and didn't really do it expecting to go to nationals, but we did it really about Van Gogh and how his mental state affected his art and about how his art has impacted and influenced so many people and many artists. We just never expected that we would even make it to nationals. And all in all, it was a fun experience. It was great to be a part of it. And when we saw that we had made it to runoffs, we were so happy.
My name of my project is the Sticky Chip Catcher Cookie, and it's a cookie that catches all the popsicle nut from the popsicle. I came up with the idea on the hot day. We were all having a popsicle, but once we were done eating our popsicle, my brother had a whole bunch of popsicle and now all over his chip. My favorite part at the invention is seeing all the other inventions.
She was actually featured on the Good Morning America show for her invention. It's a really good
There are
idea.
essentially 3 components of the Gifted and Talented program. 1, pull out groups of identified students. 2, push in services in which GT students are cluster grouped to make for targeted interventions and instruction co-teaching. And finally, enrichment clusters, where students are grouped to work together based on their own interest.
Okay. So that was really our first year of the program, and we had such great success. and it's really just taken off from there. So yeah. So let's talk a little bit about giftedness and what our model is based on. So we really partnered with the University of Connecticut. Dr. Renzulli, I call him like the godfather of giftedness, right, of gifted education. And he really came up with the 3 rings of giftedness. So you have your above average ability, your creativity, and your task commitment. And they can be any size, really. So different children have different size circles, right? So you can have a child that's extremely creative, but maybe doesn't really like sticking with a task, right? You could have a child with amazing test scores, right? And they're showing that above average ability. But then, you know, when it comes to homework and things like that, maybe they can't sustain through that task. The whole idea behind the 3-ring conception is that we feel we can teach into those skills, right? So, and that it's the intersection of the 3 rings where you really see a kid's gifted potential come to life. And then we've kind of made a new ring. Actually, I didn't make it, but I cited where it's from. The socio-cultural linguistic characteristic ring kind of goes all the way around that, and we really added that for our multilingual learners. And that the fact that, you know, we have to take into account that language shouldn't be a barrier for identification for gifted. So you have giftedness and you have kids that are just high achievers. And just because kids are high achievers doesn't necessarily make them gifted, right? These are your kids that know the answer right away, right? Their hand is up, they enjoy school, they love coming, they work hard. They're like your model perfect students, right? When you think of like what a perfect student would be. They have a great memory. They complete the assignments before they're even assigned sometimes, okay? And they're really top performing in their classroom. So we call those kids high achievers. Now, some high achievers can be gifted, absolutely. But we have some other kids too that we kind of need to look at. So then when you kind of look at the characteristics of giftedness, you'll see sometimes these characteristics can get in the way of school. Okay, so you have kids that are so concerned with justice and fairness, right? They're aware of social issues going on in their neighborhood, in their school. So we have some kids that are extremely sensitive, right, and empathetic. I always tell the story. I don't know if you've heard this story before, but I had a student. I used to teach gifted in another district, and I had a student. We read an article about acid rain. And she was so upset by it. And she thought she wouldn't come out of her house for days because her mother said she was so worried that the acid rain was going to fall on her, and she was worried about her dog. And so kids really feel these things. Gifted kids really have that heightened sense of that, you know, they think what they read is going to happen in their life. They have very strong feelings and opinions. They're very keen observers. I mean, they're the kids that are asking you why all the time. And then you answer them, and they're like, but why? And then, you know, you give them an answer, but why? They just want to constantly know more. Unique sense of humor. I almost say sometimes when you speak to a gifted child, it's kind of like you're speaking to a little adult. So kids can be like that. And then sometimes they appear bored, right? We'll talk about how some of these are barriers to identification because they mask themselves in other ways. Perfectionists. So sometimes kids can't get out of their own way, right? So these are kids that can't finish assignments because they want to do it perfectly. So often their assignments can be late, right, to hand them in because they get a block and they can't get out of their own way in order to get something done. So again, some of these might be different than, you know, what you may have thought of in the past. We also talk about our giftedness and our bilingual students, right? So we know that our bilingual students have definitely strong family connections and pride in their culture and language. They're sometimes are amazing storytellers because storytelling is very important culturally. And so we take into consideration when we're dealing with every child and their background. It's really important. We also look in our newcomers that come in, are they acquiring English very quickly? Because that could be a sign of giftedness. There. It's such a big topic now that the National Association for Gifted Children has put out plenty of research and information on our special populations. And we have a large population of multilingual learners here in Norwalk. So we're paying very close attention and making sure that we're not excluding anyone from identification. We also have, I call our learners twice exceptional. I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but those are our gifted learners that also have another issue or challenge. So a specific learning disability, right? You can be gifted and you have a learning disability. You can be gifted and you have ADHD. Some of our gifted students have attentional challenges, especially in school. Anxiety disorder often comes hand in hand with being gifted and talented. There are kids that are always worried about something. And again, that comes with that heightened sense of awareness of those around them and things like that. But any, and one often masks the other, right? Because if you have a child that is having a lot of behavior issues in school and can't focus, you often can't see their giftedness, right? And we have to really train our adults on how to look for that. So we do that at our schools as well. So these are our barriers for identification. We have a lot of gifted learners that are underachievers because they're not able to really do school well because their minds are going so fast, or they're over here maybe making a telescope in their mind when the teacher's teaching, spelling words or something like that. Again, that perfectionism is a huge barrier. We've gotten really a lot better here in Norwalk. There is, when I first came in, I would hear from a lot of people, well, that child can't possibly be gifted. He can't sit still. Or, he struggles like handing in her homework or their homework. And we've done a lot of work around those children can also be gifted. Just because they have a challenge doesn't mean that they can't be. So how do we identify for gifted and talented? So again, we come back to our 3 rings, and we do look at test scores because we need to have some sort of measure to measure that above average ability. We have something called the Naglieri. I'm going to go over what that test looks like. It's a nonverbal ability test that has no language on it. And you'll see, I have a couple of examples of what that looks like. NWEA, or the MAP testing, the kids they get it 3 times a year in the beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of year. But really, we're looking at growth in our students, right? That is also just one factor that we look at. And then we also look at their student work, whether it be a writing sample, a project that they did. That can give us some insight into that above average ability in the classroom. When it comes to creativity, we have something called the teacher rating scale, which I'll show you, which is given to teachers when they want to nominate students. And I'll show you what they are looking for, the skills and the skills that they're looking for in order to show that a student is really being creative. And again, the student work. And it's the same for the task commitment. So we're looking at those rating scales. There is a skill on there that is for task commitment. And again, the student work, because if a teacher is able to bring a long-term project in to show us at our student share meetings, which I'll go over, then that shows that commitment to the task. So our timeline. So what we do in the beginning of the school year in the summer, if a new student registers for Norwalk Public Schools, we'll put them on our list. And then our GT teachers also collect lists at the beginning of school of students that are new. We don't start screening for gifted and talented until grade 3. But before that, we do have exceptions. So sometimes I'm called into school buildings for kindergarten students, or for preschool students even, or first graders. And so I'll talk about how we kind of provide services to kids that are before grade 3. In the fall, we screen every 3rd grader in the district for gifted and talented, and we give them the universal screener, which is that nonverbal intelligence ability assessment. And then we do place 3rd graders in the fall after we have all of those meetings on all of our 3rd graders, which takes a lot of time because we like to be very thorough. We don't like to miss anyone. And now we're in our winter window, which are for teacher nominations. And that's happening right now. So we're looking at our mid-year data. We're looking at how much growth a child has made. So if they, let's say they didn't get placed in the fall, there's an opportunity for them to be placed in winter. And before I got here, there was one time a year that they looked at students and they gave one test, and it was decided down in central office who would be in the program. It is a very, very, very different process now that I'm very proud of, because I think it's very thorough, and it's really a model for how identification should look. And then in the spring, we have a window for parent nominations. And I have the dates that I'll show you for that comes on the website. There's a rating scale for parents to fill out. There's a place for you to write. You can put work samples, you can attach them. And then, so that's one time a year where we let parents nominate. So before I got here, parents were only allowed to nominate their student one time in their whole academic career for gifted and talented. Now you can nominate every year because kids change, right? And kids kind of grow into themselves sometimes, especially as they get older. So we really don't, again, to me, this is a program where we want to include as many students as possible. And I'll kind of show you and give you an idea of how we do that. And again, our student share meetings are something like a PPT meeting that happens, right? If you have a child with that receives special education services, they're kind of like that, except they don't have the parent as part of that meeting. But we do meet, it's the principal, myself, or the assistant principal, the GT teacher, the classroom teachers, and any specialists that may have something to say about that child. And those are scheduled in every school, grades 3 through 8. And they're scheduled really 3 times a year. The fall one, again, is just for new students and grade 3, though. Does anyone have any questions? I'll stop there, because that's kind of a lot of information I've just given you about the process. Yes?
How about for a kid who's not in 3rd grade yet?
So a kid that's not in 3rd grade yet, that's at a school here in Norwalk. So usually what it starts is a conversation with the building principal. So I've had parents go to the building administration and say, I have a child that I believe is gifted. We really need to take a look. It's also a conversation with the classroom teacher as well to kind of see what they're seeing in the classroom. So absolutely, that's a great question. Any other questions? Yeah.
Can I just follow up?
Sure.
What about the Glow Up program?
So the Glow Up program?
Yeah. My daughter was in it.
Okay. So it's kind of morphed over time. We still have talent development, and I'm going to talk about that. It was in 2nd grade, maybe? Yeah. Okay. So the GLOW program was piloted at a few schools, and it was basically talent development for younger students. We have that now, but it takes place during the WIN block. So the program is still happening at most schools, depending on the schedule, and if the gifted and talented teacher is available to work with the younger students. So if you have a full-time GT teacher at your school, the likelihood of having more time for talent development, you'll have more opportunities for that. I have teachers that are split between 2 buildings, so that makes the scheduling can be a bit of an issue. But when we can offer it, we offer it. Okay, so how do I nominate my child? So you can nominate your child. So if you go to the MPS website under academics and curriculum, our forms are available in English and Spanish. This year, Our spring parent nomination window will open on April 1st and it closes on April 12th. So we don't really look at 8th graders in the spring because our program stops in 8th grade. So it just is really for grades 3 through 7 at that time. And again, everything is electronic. All the forms are electronic, and you can just, if you prefer to print it out and send in a hard copy, that's okay too. We try to make it the process as easy as possible. But everything's on our website. So I want to talk a little bit about what happens at that student share meeting. So again, so the purple box tells you, who is at the meetings, and we have these meetings at every school. We gather and we talk about students all the time. And again, we review them multiple times per year, and we review their data, and we talk about, is there a need for that child to get something in addition to what they're already getting in the classroom? And so then during that meeting, the child is either identified as gifted and talented. So the state of Connecticut mandates us as a district, we have to identify students for gifted and talented, but Connecticut state law says we don't actually have to provide them with any services, which again, here in Norwalk, we don't believe that. That's why we have an amazing program. But there are districts in Connecticut that do not have gifted and talented. And that's really how they can kind of get away with it, is that they can just identify, but then they don't have to do anything. So if anybody's interested in lobbying, it would be a great topic. So they're either identified for the GT pull-out group, and I'll talk about the differences between that. So you're either identified as gifted and talented. You could be placed in an enrichment or that GLOW program, or the WIN, is that what we're now calling it, talent development, which is a cycle of a 6 to 8 week cycle of enrichment. And so where the GT teacher will work with your child for that 6 to 8 weeks. We also offer enrichment during WIN that is not with the GT teacher as well. There's lots of enrichment going on, but talent development specifically is with the GT teacher, because I like to get another set of eyes, of highly trained eyes on that child to see if there's a need for them to be identified. And sometimes all of the scores that we get still doesn't give us an accurate picture of your child. It just doesn't. Some kids are really horrible test takers, right? A lot of our gifted students are really bad test takers, so they're not going to do well on some of those assessments. So I forgot to mention, in the 3rd grade, before we actually screen the kids for gifted and talented, my gifted and talented specialists push into all of the 3rd grade classrooms and they kid watch. I call it kid watching. They're observing the kids, they're giving them a creativity assignment, and they're observing every kid, and they're writing notes. So again, we don't rely on scores alone, because I don't think any child should be reduced to a number. I think it's about that child and what they need, and also their growth. So kids that are in an enrichment with a gifted and talented teacher and they're doing really well, they've showed that they can attend to a task and they can do work that might not be on grade level. So why wouldn't we then provide the child with the opportunity? So we also keep something called a watch list. So there might be kids that were like, yes, definitely gifted and talented. I'm not sure, let's try them, let's put them in some talent development, see how they do. And then there's kids that we'd say, they don't really need an enrichment, but I'm seeing something. So we keep those kids on a watch list. And then when the next window comes up, we screen all of those kids again. So we're constantly reviewing and looking at kids. That's why I think it makes the program really special.
Parents told about that their child was being in any of those
Yes,
categories?
yes, there is a letter that goes home. So the district, when I first started, they made us send out yes letters and no letters. And I'm like, I'm a parent, and if I got a no letter, I think I would probably start crying. Like, it's terrible. I always tell the story too, like for my own child, he was, they identified him as gifted in Greenwich. And I used to work in the Greenwich district. And then when we moved to New Canaan, he was no longer gifted. And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't get it. But yeah, but we look at that growth, and we look at those kids that are on the watch list, because we're always we want to grow our program. We want to make it something that's really special. And I'm like the worst person, but the best person to talk about this, because I'm so proud of it. We're nationally known. I don't know if you know this, but we've had visitors that have come to our program from the Netherlands. They've come from Seattle. I always say the Seattle people shut us down because that was 2020, and then they came and COVID, we were closed the next day. I was like, oh boy. And then we've had, schools all over Connecticut, districts, New Milford, New Fairfield, everybody comes to Norwalk because we have such a special program here. It's different than any other program that I have worked for or know about in the state. So, and UConn is so proud of us. They keep sending us people. I'm like, we have to let the teachers do their jobs. So that's kind of how that's our system that's in place. Okay. And then we do have something called an appeals process. When I first started, we had tons of appeals because it was the first year and people weren't sure. But now that we're looking at kids multiple times per year, I would say I've had maybe 1 or 2 appeals in the whole school year for the past 4 years or so, which is a really good indication that we're doing the right thing. Do kids fall through the cracks? Absolutely they do. And that's why I'm here, to make sure that the kids don't fall through the cracks and that we're really looking at our students. Okay, so this, I thought you might like to see. This is how, this is what the teachers this is the rating scale that they use to look for gifted behavior. So there's 4 quadrants. One is that exceptional motivation to succeed, exceptional ability to learn, exceptional creative productive thinking, and that exceptional application of knowledge. So it's a scale of 1 to 4. So it would be out of 16 points that we're really looking for kids to shine. And it's so funny because I have teachers that will come to me and they're like, the kid has a 4 out of 16. I'm like, but you're nominating this kid. Like, can you go back and see if there's anything else that you're seeing? Because there's got to be something. So I think it's a pretty fair process in terms of kind of what we're looking for. And then, like I said, we have our gifted and talented specialists at each school, and so they kind of help in that process. We give these to art teachers, music teachers, because sometimes what a child is exhibiting, let's say in art class, is not the same thing that you're seeing in the classroom, right? They might just be really interested in that program. So we really like to involve as many people as possible in making sure we review the whole child and not just bits and pieces. So this was the Naglieri test. We call it the NNAT3. It's all on the computer. It's a computer-based program. And literally, there's no directions. We explain it to the kids, but they literally have to pick the picture that goes in the box. And that's it. And it's a 30-minute assessment. And of course, the puzzles, they get harder, that we probably wouldn't be able to answer some of them. They get really challenging. But the kids, we kind of go at it this is fun, we're gonna do puzzles today. Kids usually like visuals and puzzles. So we usually have kids that do really well. And we've used this assessment. We've found kids that we would never have found before, right? Because we don't really test this in school, right? This is your nonverbal. So your kids that are really good at puzzles and logic, they're logical and they do sequencing and they can kind of look at things and figure them out. So we're trying to catch from every angle. This test is really one that's shown to have no bias in it because there's no language. I used to give another assessment when I worked in Greenwich to look at verbal ability. And the analogies that they were using were words that kids may never have heard of unless they, I had kids that were coming from Japan and China. They're like, what is this? What is I want to say tricycle, but you could kind of figure out. But it was words that they don't have that thing where they're coming from. So I like this assessment. It's very, it doesn't have bias in it. Again, so if a child scores poorly on that, It's not going to exclude them from the program. It's just one window. I always say like things are for inclusion in the program, but we're not saying, oh, you got a terrible score on that, like you're out. And you can also tell if you get a really low score on that, the kids have just guessed, because it's really hard to get like a really, really low score. Average is 100. If you think of those typical IQ scores that they used to give, which we don't give IQ scores anymore because there's a ton of bias in those assessments. So we don't have cutoff scores in Norwalk. We really don't. But if I have a kid that's like off the charts, that would be an indication to me like, okay, this kid has something that we're not really tapping into here in school. So we need to take a closer look. So here's the difference of the tiered programs that I was telling you about. So we have the pull-out groups, which you kind of saw on the video, right? That's the formal identification. In elementary school, they get approximately an hour a week. In middle school, it's a separate graded class, okay? Some schools, they offer it as related arts. Other schools, they offer it as kind of like if a band or strings, like it's scattered or it rotates on a rotating schedule. So sometimes they are pulled out of core instruction for their GT class. So that's just something else to kind of keep in mind. When we get to middle school, we don't ever want to stress kids out. So we may have identified them in elementary school, but if it gets to be like too much for them, we can let them sit out of taking that class until they're maybe ready to come back in, right? So some years are harder than others for kids. We know that. It's a full year program. It's led by the GT specialist. There is a set GT curriculum, which I'll show you briefly, which we're really proud of because we wrote it, and it's actually published, which is really cool. And then participation in those national competitions that you saw, Invention Convention, History Day. And then we have our talent development or WIN, during WIN, that GLOW program that you were talking about. Still formally identifying kids for those groups. They're flexible groups, right? 6 to 8 weeks. They are, most of the time, they're more than 30 minutes a week. Sometimes the WIN classes meet every day for 6 to 8 weeks. So your child's actually, if they're in talent development, sometimes they're getting more touch time, right? Contact time with the GT teacher, which I find, people are like, oh, my child only got enrichment. And I'm like, well, it's actually a really good thing because you're getting more time. 6 to 8 week cycles, we offer it, we really do it subject-based because now we have a English language arts WIN, and then we also have a math WIN. So we offer enrichment in math and also ELA. Now your kid can also be in the pull-out group and they can also be getting another enrichment because, again, they're subject-based where we're more project-based for the pull-out. These would be more math. I'm going to do a special math unit or a math project or an English language arts project. And that's led by the GT specialist. If it's talent development, it's always the GT teacher. It's not another teacher. But some WIN groups are just enrichment and they are with another teacher in the school. And we emphasize student growth. So at the end of that 6 to 8 week cycle, sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 2. If your child is in that, we will review them, right? But it's usually during that next window for winter. Did you have a question?
How do you determine if it's pull-out versus talent development versus both?
So for the pull-out, there really has to be overwhelming evidence that the child needs something that needs to be out of the classroom. So it could be the rating scores that really kind of pull it over. And I always say those rating scores are super important because, again, I worked at a district where we filled out those rating scales and then they didn't look at them. So I think your child's classroom teacher is really important in this process because they can tell us what's going on. So it depends. We really try to, those talent development kids, it could be that we're seeing some kind of gifted characteristics, but not consistently. So we just want to get a closer look and work with them further. Again, when you identify a student, like you're identifying them for life. So we just want to make sure that we're making really good decisions. We never want to overwhelm a student, right? Because the work does get harder as you move on. And again, there's extra projects. The competitions are, History Day is probably one of the most academically rigorous competitions that I've ever seen. It's a lot of work. So we want to make sure that we're making the right decisions for kids and we never want to overwhelm them. So that's kind of Is there any other questions about the two? Sure.
Yeah, so for the GP pull-out program in middle school, they go to a separate classroom. Now, which class are they getting pulled out of?
It depends.
Who makes that determination?
So it's really up to the buildings and their schedules.
So in West Rox's case, that's up to West Rox administration?
Correct. Yes. Yes, it's up to West Rox or whatever school that your child's in. Again, other middle schools, we run it as a related arts. So, but herein lies the problem. You have a kid that's gifted and talented. They play in the band. They sing in the chorus, right? They take a language. You run out of elective time.
They take her out of math.
Right.
It's actually her weakest subject. It makes no sense.
She should definitely not be taken out of math.
Oh, I
every
agree.
time.
And you've mentioned this several times.
Yeah. Okay. Email me.
Okay.
I'll help you. That's what I'm here for. Yeah. So our gifted and talented curriculum, which I'm really proud of, it focuses on these social justice themes that build upon each other from grades 3 to 8. So we start in grade 3 with identity. How does my identity shape my learning experiences? So kids are really like looking inward, like who am I as a learner? How do I learn best? What kind of things do I like to learn about? And then grade 4, we really do what fuels innovation, which is where we introduce invention convention, grade 4. And if you have a 4th grader and you're doing invention convention, parents can help, which is, I'm sorry in advance.
How much can I help?
You can help a lot in invention convention. It's amazing.
At what point does it not become the child's project?
I know, well that's
Like,
the thing.
okay. Lots of ideas.
I know. I hear you.
I mean, is there money at stake here?
I mean, some of these inventions have been patented.
Yeah, I know.
I know.
It's scary.
I know it is a little frightening, but yes, you can help. But again, we want the project to really be, so it's like you teach the kid how to do a skill and then have them do the skill is what I always tell parents, you know. I used to do something called Odyssey of the Mind. I don't know if you've ever heard of that competition. And so the adults were not allowed to help with that, but then you like get to the world finals and then you have China comes in and like all their coaches built all of their sets and you're like, really? Like I could have done that too. So it's just, yeah. So there are some that you can help. Invention convention is one that you can help, which becomes a little bit difficult because then you have children who go home that may not have help at home, right? And then kids that come home that have families that can do a lot of things. So we really try to help kids in school on their invention convention product and really help to foster that, especially for our kids that we know aren't getting that help at home, to try to make it, you know, as equitable as possible. Grade 5, we move into empathy. And how do we foster empathy through multiple perspectives? Again, these are just themes for the grades. I love a theme-based program because there's so many projects that could come off of identity and innovation and empathy. We really start to talk about how do we kind of give back to our communities, whether it be our school or our larger community. How do we help people that are in our communities? And then grade 6, we talk about diversity and how does diversity allow us to solve our everyday problems, right? Our program is very problem-based and really having kids design something, whether it be a product or a service, that has an authentic audience to it, right? So we don't want kids just like writing, you know, to the superintendent about something that they're unhappy with. We want them to then go present that letter to the superintendent. And she's actually come to a lot of students and really read their letters and it's amazing. Grade 7, we deal with justice, and kids love justice because it's justice for everything. Like, you know, how do you know something is just? So they're really looking at, again, History Day kind of comes in here. So it really allows itself, it's very, the topics, it's a different topic every year for History Day, but these themes really help us with History Day. It's a big part of our program. So how does justice influence the systems in our society? And then we finish in 8th grade with action, and I call it like our culminating project. This should be really an action project. We've had a ton of projects at the middle school that have benefited either the school or the community. It's kind of like, you know, how do we teach our kids to really be active, involved members in our society? I think that's really important. Reading, math, really important skills, science, really important. But when we can teach a kid that they have a voice and that they can get involved in making the world a better place, I think that's all you really need. Just an overview example, again, because I want to leave some time. We have about 10 minutes left, so I want to leave some time for questions. So we have these amazing theme projects that we kind of work on. There's usually, there should be a rubric that's attached to each one of the projects. And we really love kids to self-select their topics for a lot of things. Again, we know that when kids are involved in topics that they're interested in, their gifted characteristics really come alive. So let them choose the topic that they want to research. And we're teaching those research skills to say, like, we're teaching kids how to write annotated bibliographies. And some kids don't even learn how to do that until they go to college. So these are skills, these research skills are really skills that are going to take them very far in their academic career. And we're starting them in 5th and 6th grade. Some of the things we've done in the past when we do our talent development, we have these really cool choice boards with digital links. And that really allows teachers to talk to the kids and find out, what they're interested in. And then again, we're watching for that growth. I say it always, if we're not sure if we should place a child in gifted or identify them as gifted, our talent development gives us that extra 6 to 8 weeks to really be sure that we're making a good decision. And that's really the end of my presentation. I know I covered a ton of information, so I'd love to hear your questions if you have any. Yeah.
Sorry, I always have lots of questions.
It's okay.
Apologies.
That's
One
okay.
that I have is, what kind of additional accreditations or training do the GT teachers have that are in the school?
So when we started the program, all of our teachers had to get a master's certificate from UConn in their gifted education. So it was an extra 12 credits past the master's to get trained. So all of our teachers are, I would say with the exception of one newbie, have been. The district was paying for those courses, which they don't pay for them anymore. So, but yes, I'm always sending my teachers to professional development. One of my teachers, I believe in really letting my teachers kind of take the lead and go. So she is a younger teacher and she presented at the national level. I helped co-present with her. So always giving teachers opportunities to present, go to conferences and learn more about the gifted and talented best practices. But yeah, it's a good question. Yes.
You mentioned some GT teachers are split between schools.
Yes.
Are they looking to change that so every school has one teacher for their school?
That would be my dream. Sometimes we need two. Again, budgeting is, it's hard.
Maybe
It's hard.
you could go to Australia about that one.
We love to have, yeah, exactly. We love to have parents get involved because you guys are our biggest supporters. Again, since Connecticut doesn't mandate services, we love when parents go to bat for our program because we think it's so vital to kids' development and making sure that they are appropriately challenged in school.
Just to follow up on that, how
Yeah.
is it determined which ones get a full versus partial? Is it numbers and then does it change each year?
It could be population, yeah. It could be based on the number of kids that are in the program. But if it were up to me, there'd be so many kids in the program. Yeah, you'd need 12 of me. So, yes.
So you're saying that once you're identified in 3rd grade, it stays with you through 8th grade as long as you continue to meet the standards?
Yes. Or again, we've had kids that have sat out for a year and come back. We've had kids that have moved out and then come back to the district. So we do like to just make sure that we reevaluate. I really like to look at that 5th grade to 6th grade transition. I'm looking into I don't want to say a huge evaluation, but really that 5th to 6th grade to really make sure that it's a good fit for kids. But we would never take away their gifted label. I don't think that's fair.
And so, sorry, one more to that. So the label follows you intra-district if you were to switch to a different school?
So that's a great question. If you are to transfer to another district, usually what I have parents do is give the school my contact, or I can give you their testing information, so you could take that to your new district. But
And sorry, that's within Norwalk too, or that's
within Norwalk, it's not an issue. It's just yes, because what we do is we flag the kids in Power School. They have a little flag that says gifted and talented. So we have had cases where kids will show up at another school, and for some reason they get missed. But we try to catch those really quickly. Yeah, we have and the kids really are like, hello, I was in GT at, Kendall, and now I'm at this school. So they're usually really good.
Is the recording of this available anywhere?
Yes, it's going to be on the YouTube channel soon, right? Yeah, tomorrow. Wow, that's fast. Yes, question.
I have two questions.
Sure.
So first one is, with the 7th grade students, they're able to apply to be in GT for the 8th grade? Is that
Yes.
correct? Or,
Yes.
okay. And then in regards to the program and how you feel it's being, I guess, like, if you feel it's being successful, like, is there particular like data or research that you're collecting or able to provide that shows what the impact is of this program to,
Yeah.
within the children's lives?
We're always really looking at data. I mean, Norwalk is a data-driven district. The data was showing us before we had this program is that, you're welcome, that our gifted kids were doing well on assessments, but their growth was low. So it's like once you hit a certain point, your growth can really either plateau or stop. So we really like to keep those kids with, high growth, high achievement. So we're really looking at those quadrants, and we're looking at our kids to say, okay, good, you're in the green, you have high growth and high achievement. So we are looking at that, and really just speaking to, I wish we had some kids here today because they would just tell you how the program has changed them. I say, gifted and talented, it's a nice to have for some students, but for some students, it's almost life-changing because it kind of puts them in a different, on a different path, right? Than they may have not taken. So I love that.
So are you not collecting any data
Yes.
as far as what happens to them after 8th grade, or?
I would love to. I would love the program to go through high school,
Okay.
if you want to put a little. Yeah.
No, I'm just simply asking.
Yeah.
Like what kind of summary, what kind of data is out there that says, these kids from the 3rd grade, they
Yeah.
didn't until 8th grade, this is where they are now, this is what they're doing.
Exactly.
Like what are the results is what I'm trying to.
That could maybe be a second dissertation
Yeah.
for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be a really good study. But as of right now, they're looking at graduation rates and things like that. But yeah.
Okay. And sorry, it's gonna be my last
Yeah,
question.
of
Just
course.
from a diversity perspective, are you also monitoring like, just equity, diversity, inclusion, like
Absolutely.
different backgrounds that are in the program?
Yeah.
I know you have people looking at the children in the 3rd grade. Are those people culturally diverse, or are they all,
Yes.
do they all look alike?
We've really made huge strides in really making our program more equitable and diverse. And that's really, it's one of my goals, my personal goals. And so we really make sure that, again, what is this child's challenge, and, maybe why are their test scores here? Why is there task commitment here? We're really trying to make sure, because we know giftedness knows no boundaries. So we really, I've done a lot of training with my teachers. We've done a lot of training with classroom teachers on what to look for. And I'm constantly going back and talking about, let's go, who else can we find? Let's go, this is important. So thank you for asking that question. It's an important question. Yes?
Sorry, I have a lot too.
Sure.
How universal are those 3 components of the ability, the creativity, and the task commitment? So if we look at like other cultures,
Yeah.
is it replicated, or are those the same things that are considered to be gifted in other countries and cultures, or is that
Yes.
really?
Although different size, yeah. I think it really is all of those 3 things, but they might look different in different cultures, right? So in a lot of Asian cultures, like you're not supposed to ask a lot of questions to the teacher. Like you need to just be quiet. And so if you're not really verbal and out there and asking all those questions, then, you might not get that exceptional. So we've really done a lot of training on, what does that look like? We've actually added another box at our bilingual school to look for other things that might not they're not getting picked up on that scale, which they use that for one of the Javits programs, that rating scale that I showed you at UConn. So it's been tested, and it's a viable instrument. So good. You guys have great questions. Yes.
I was just going to say, I teach at Bonus, and I've worked with our gifted and talented teachers for several years. And our kids, when you ask about results, our kids proposed a school garden. And they met with the superintendent, and they did all the work. They've now met with Chartwells. We've been a recipient of multiple grants. I think we've raised like 50 grand to do a garden. We've raised almost 600 pounds of food that we've donated back to the kids and stuff. So it all came from their 6th, 7th, and 8th grade tier 3 projects. So it's really wonderful to see them do all of that. And it's really the kids and the teachers kind of just sit back and say, I'll point you in the right direction, but you have to do it. So it's really interesting to just see once the kids kind of have the direction to go, they take off.
Thank you. I did not pay him to come here.
I'm here for my daughter who's in the
yeah, he's not planted here. So it's okay. Anyone else? It's about 7 o'clock, but I can stay for a few minutes if you have individual questions. I'm happy to answer them. The website just kind of getting up and running, but I try to get as many important pieces of information. I will post the PowerPoint slides on the website also, so you could go back to the slides and look at them, but I'm always available to chat. You can email me anytime. Calling sometimes is hard because sometimes I'm all over the place, but email is probably the best way to get in touch with me, especially as we go into that parent nomination season. And if you have concerns too, please email me and let me know, and let me know quickly so that I can get involved and help in any situations that are going on that you might think shouldn't be that way. Yes?
Will you have a link posted on your website to this recording?
We could put a link on the website as well. Yes, we will do that. Great idea. Thank you.
And how do we find this in the web?
So if you go to the Norwalk Public Schools website, and there's I think you look at curriculum, you click on curriculum, you'll see there's a drop-down menu, and you'll find Gifted and Talented has its own drop-down under departments. So yeah, it's a new website. It's more user-friendly.
Great.
Yeah. Great. And also too, at your own individual schools, you have your Gifted and Talented specialist. They are all amazing. I'm not just saying that because they're my teachers, but they're a wonderful team. They're extremely collaborative. And so, sharing ideas and things like that. And they're your like first line of defense if you have any questions about your school specifically. I can talk more, widespread district things, but when it comes to the school, they're a great resource for you. If your child is younger than grade 3 and you think that they're highly gifted, please email me. I'll come and take a look. I'll investigate. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming. I'm sorry, I just talked at you the whole time. I don't like doing that, but.